Your intuition it doesn't bully you or berate you. So if the voice in your head sounds aggressive or even cruel, that is not your intuition. That's your critical inner voice. And if you have watched this series from the start, you already know that your critical inner voice is not you at all. This video is going to teach you how to tell the difference between your intuition and your critical inner voice, because confusing the two is one of the biggest reasons why women stay stuck in people-pleasing and self-abandonment. And I know this because I lived it. For years, I listened to the wrong voice and I called it being realistic and I called it my intuition. I thought that voice was me. But what I was really doing was letting my inner critic run my life. And I paid for it with my inner peace, my self-worth, my relationships, my confidence, and my self-trust. Worst of all, I let it talk me into hating myself. So if you have ever thought or said, I just have a feeling, but that feeling made you smaller, insecure, and more afraid, this video is for you. But before we start, if you haven't watched the last video where we dismantled the belief that high standards mean being tough on myself, then pause this and go watch that one first. Also, I'm going to do a whole other playlist on intuition alone and how to plug into it. But for now, we're simply going to focus on distinguishing between your intuition and your critical inner voice. And once you've done this work, we can work on plugging into your magic because we all have intuition. So I am going to show you one simple litmus test to tell the difference between your intuition and critical inner voice. Because your inner critic, it sounds urgent, it's full of shame and full of control. It says things like, you don't know what you're doing. You can never do anything right. You should already know better than this. What's wrong with you? Why are you like this? And that voice is extremely loud, it's demanding, and honestly, a straight up bully. But your intuition is calm, grounded, and compassionate. It doesn't rush you, it doesn't berate you, and it definitely doesn't bully you into growth. Intuition sounds like, this doesn't feel aligned. This isn't right for me. I'm still learning. So if you hear a voice that's like, maybe you ask a question or you're trying to figure out a problem, a solution to a problem, and you're like, maybe the question is this a good time? And the voice that you hear is like, oh, of course this is not the time. Are you stupid? What are you thinking? That is your critical inner voice, because your intuition, if it's not the right time, your intuition would simply just say, this isn't the right time, not now, just wait. It's not going to berate you within whatever question it's answering, if that makes sense. So the short version of this is your intuition is extremely compassionate and your critical inner voice is negative and mean. So even if your intuition is telling you something you don't want to hear, it's going to say it in a very compassionate way. Like, no, he is not the one, but someone else is. Or no, this is not the right time. Yes, you should leave this job because you deserve to be treated better. It's not going to be like, berating you and belittling you and all the things that your critical inner voice does. So here's the thing. The reason your inner critic feels believable is not because it knows what's up. It's because it's familiar. Because again, this voice came from a critical parent, an emotionally immature caregiver, maybe a teacher or coach or authority figure that you could never please. So it also sounds like them. So if your nervous system learned, if I listen to this voice and do exactly what it says, I stay safe, then that is your familiar default setting. And the familiarity is your conditioning. So again, and I know I repeat myself, a lot of our behavior patterns, there's simply conditioning that we developed in our developmental years as a child or teenager to keep us emotionally or even physically safe. But as fully functional adults, it's just not serving us anymore. So it's not that you're a bad person or whatever, it's just that it doesn't feel right because it's not serving you well anymore. And when you confuse familiarity with the truth, you're staying loyal to those voices who criticized you. And if you're loyal to those voices, that means you're abandoning yourself because, again, those voices are not you at all. And people who hate themselves and their own lives do not get to take that out on you anymore. That shit stops here. And when you stop confusing fear with your intuition, you start to build your self-trust. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop managing everybody else's emotions to feel safe in your own body. Because when you trust yourself, external validation becomes completely irrelevant. And that's not to say you never ask someone for advice or seek an external opinion. It means in those situations, you're always filtering someone else's opinion through a lens of discernment because you know in your soul that only you know what's best for you. And I am telling you, when you stop abandoning yourself and have that unshakable self-trust, your entire life will change because you are free from the chains of external approval addiction. So, to recap, your intuition doesn't bully you into becoming someone else. It doesn't sound like shame. It doesn't sound like panic. And it doesn't sound like the people who taught you that love had to be earned. That voice that you've been obeying, it's not your truth. It's your trauma trying to keep you safe because that's what you've been conditioned to do. So your action item for today is simple and builds on the last video. So again, when your inner critic says something like, I can't do anything right, you're not going to argue with it. You're not going to shame yourself for thinking it. You're going to reframe it. Either out loud or in your head, you say the truth. So for example, I am learning. You're not going to use toxic positivity and be like, oh, I do everything perfect. It's not about that. It's reframing it with the truth. So if you made a mistake and your critical inner voice kicks in with, I can't do anything right, you're just going to reframe it with the truth. Nope, I am learning. So the next step is, which is the final action step of this series, after you reframe it to I am learning, you are going to hype yourself up. So it could be something like, I am so effing proud of myself for breaking generational trauma. I'm proud of myself for being loyal to myself. I'm proud of myself for learning this. I'm proud of myself for having the self-awareness to change this behavior. I'm proud of myself for learning how to trust myself. I'm proud of myself for being so amazing. And that is how you turn your critical inner voice to being your biggest hype person. And again, I'm going to make a completely different series on actually tapping into your intuition because that is so important and actually another important step of this work. But for now, be aware of your critical inner voice, do all of the action steps that we talked about in the past few videos, and then always be your own hype person. It may feel weird at first because when I started doing this work, I came from zero self-worth. And also I was never celebrated in my family. So it just felt so weird, but trust me, you will get used to it. And it's just such a good feeling to be so proud of yourself and hype yourself up. So let's recap what we talked about in this entire playlist, because we didn't just talk about negative self-talk. We dismantled the entire belief system that trained you to be cruel to yourself. We collapsed the 3 beliefs, which are lies, they're not the truth, that have been running the show, which are, if I'm perfect, I'll be loved. High standards mean being tough on myself, and my inner critic is my intuition. But underneath the root of all of them is that my worth comes from what I do for others and how perfectly I do it. And this belief is why your inner voice sounds like a critical parent. And it's why you confuse self-hate with discipline. It's why you think beating yourself up will somehow make you better, because it won't. All it does is keep you in survival mode, hypervigilant, exhausted, and constantly chasing approval that will never satisfy you. And this playlist exists for one reason: to help you stop letting an internal bully run your life and start building an inner voice that actually hypes you up and has your back. Because that voice in your head, the one that tells you you're never enough, never ahead, and never doing it right, it is not you. Again, people who hate themselves and hate their own lives do not get to run your life anymore. We're not letting it stay in charge. You don't heal by being harder on yourself. You heal by becoming loyal to yourself, by cheering yourself on, by learning instead of punishing, by trusting yourself instead of abandoning yourself for external validation. And this is what it looks like to go from being an internal bully to your loudest hype woman. And if this series hit, let's keep it going. You can either rewatch this playlist, stay tuned for my playlist on intuition, and if you want to go deeper, this playlist pairs perfectly with my self-criticism to self-connection playlist, where we talk a lot about perfectionism and self-compassion. Because again, we're done tearing ourselves apart to earn love. It's time to hype yourself up, and that is how you shine from the inside.